Peace be upon you. So millions of Muslims around the world for years encouraged their children to memorize the Quran without any understanding of what's being said. And the typical response for such actions is that they claim that merely reciting these sounds gives that individual credit in the eyes of God, that it doesn't matter about the actual words and their meanings, that if they just stick with reciting these sounds, that's enough to give them credit. And this is one of the biggest tricks that the devil has pulled upon the Muslim world. That these individuals recite this book, they memorize this entire book, 6,346 verses, 77,850 words, and not understand one iota of it. And it doesn't matter that they're not Arabic, because even among the Arab world, the vast majority of Arabs who recite the Quran really don't understand a big chunk of it, because the terminology that's used, the vocabulary that's used, the grammar that's used is not like normal Arabic. This is written in perfect Arabic, and you have to study the actual language in order to understand it. Now, this does not mean that everyone should go and study Arabic. God informs us that it's irrelevant the language. What matters is the sincerity. But someone who isn't sincere enough to go and actually understand what it is that they're reciting has kind of failed that test already. God tells us in Surah 41 verse 44, it says, if we made it a non-Arabic Quran, they would have said, why did it come down in that language? And here it says, whether it is Arabic or non-Arabic, say for those who believe it is a guide and healing. As for those who disbelieve, they will be deaf and blind to it, as if they are being addressed from far away. So God is letting us know, whether it's Arabic or non-Arabic, that this Quran will guide individuals who deserve the guidance and will lead astray those who deserve to be led astray. And so the criteria is not to learn Arabic. The criteria is to understand the Quran, to actually read it for what it is that it means. One of the names of the Quran is al-Zikr, the reminder. Now, how do you possibly remind someone in a language they don't understand? God also tells us that the Quran are for those who reflect upon its verses. Now, how do you reflect upon the verses of something, again, you don't understand? In Surah 7 verse 2 it reads, this scripture has been revealed to you, you shall not harbor doubt about it in your heart, that you may warn with it, and to provide a reminder for the believers. Now, if someone was to read this in Arabic without any understanding, how would this ever apply? We see similarly in 2150, it says, this too is a blessed reminder that we sent down. Are you denying it? Now, if someone was telling this to you in Cantonese or in Spanish or in Esperanto, and you didn't speak any of those languages, then the reminder would be utterly useless. In Surah 23 verse 68 it says, why do they not reflect upon this scripture? Do they not realize they have received something never attained by their ancestors? Now again, if someone's reading this in a language they don't understand, how are they possibly going to be able to interpret that meaning? How are they going to be able to apply this in practice? Surah 38 verse 29 says, this scripture has been sent down to you that is sacred. Perhaps they reflect on its verses. Those who possess intelligence will take heed. How is anyone going to take heed or reflect upon the verses, again, if it's just merely sounds that are coming out of their mouth? So what does God equate individuals who do this, who repeat sounds without any understanding? In Surah 2 verse 171 it reads, the example of such disbelievers is that of parrots who repeat what they hear of sounds and calls without understanding. Deaf, dumb, and blind they cannot understand. God is equating such people who just repeat sounds without understanding as that of someone like a parrot. That they're deaf, dumb, and blind, and they cannot understand. And this is what's going on to millions of people who, in essence, are just memorizing these sounds without any understanding. And the culprit for this is idol worship. It's because people who do such things, and I don't blame the children, but you get to a point of an age of responsibility where you have to decide, are you following this blindly, or did you actually research and study why it is that you follow this religion? God equates this idol worship to those who follow their parents' religion blindly. In Surah 2 verse 170 it says, when they are told, follow what God has revealed herein, they say we follow only what we found our parents doing. What if their parents did not understand and were not guided? If your parents merely told you you have to memorize the Quran, that you have to be a Muslim, that you have to abide by these rules, without you doing the due diligence, then you've set up your parents as an idol. And this is inherently the problem where people are following traditions that have no backing in the Quran. And this has been a way that the devil has duped billions of people since the time of Adam, and God warns us of this. In Surah 7, verse 27, it reads, "O children of Adam, do not let the devil dupe you as he did when he caused the eviction of your parents from paradise and the removal of their garments to expose their bodies. He and his tribe see you while you do not see them. We appoint the devils as companions of those who do not believe." In 728, it continues, it says, "They commit a gross sin, then say, we found our parents doing this, and God has commanded us to do it. Say, God never advocates sin. Are you saying about God what you do not know? God never advocates sin." These individuals who are following their parents' religion blindly inherently are incorporating the false traditions of their parents without any backing from the Quran. And by not examining the Quran itself for what the Quran has to say about these matters, they end up accepting their parents' religion blindly. And when on the day of resurrection they're going to be questioned about this, their inevitable response is that they are doing what they believe God has commanded them because they were following their parents blindly. It continues in 729, it says, "Say, my Lord advocates justice and to stand devoted to him alone at every place of worship. You shall devote your worship absolutely to him alone, just as he initiated you. You will ultimately go back to him. Some he guided while others are committed to straying. They have taken the devils as their masters instead of God, yet they believe that they are guided." These individuals have been born into this religion, but because they have never examined the core principles of this religion by examining the book in a language they understand, they're inevitably going to be sent astray. Because again, they're just following what was dictated to them and not following the religion of God. God commands us in the Quran, in Surah 17, verse 36, it says, "You shall not accept any information unless you verify it for yourself. I have given you the hearing, the eyesight, and the brain, and you're responsible for using them." Again, if someone never reads the Quran in a language they understand, they could memorize this verse in Arabic, but without any understanding, they will never be able to apply it to their actual practice. And because of that, they're going to be sent astray. As stated earlier, I believe this is the biggest trick that the devil has played upon the Muslim masses. That he takes this pristine book from God and he convinces the people that they don't need to understand this book. That all they need to do is recite it in a language that most of these people do not understand, and that they will get the credit and the guidance for doing such things. And by doing that, they're completely going against the very premise of this Quran, that this Quran is a reminder, that this Quran, the verses must be reflected upon, that we have to examine all inherited information we receive, that we should not follow our parents' religion blindly. Now, what's ironic is that these same individuals who are promoting the memorization of the Quran without any understanding, that these are the same individuals who are typically promoting hadith, that they will readily translate every hadith and they will translate these stories and they will share these stories among the masses and give people a false understanding of the religion. That the devil has opened the door for this false narrative of Islamic law and jurisprudence and the actual law that God has sent down through the Quran, that he keeps it concealed under a language that most people, again, are not going to understand. And it's fascinating. You go into the literature and you see volumes and volumes around proper tajweed and pronunciation of the Quran and the ways of memorizing the Quran. And when it comes to the actual understanding of the Quran, there's such little material available. And by God's leave, we're trying to change that. We're trying to provide tools and resources for people to be able to go and understand the Quran for themselves. That similarly, if you accept this information merely because you heard it from me, then you're falling into the same trap as these other individuals. Each person has to go and study the Quran for themselves. They have to look into this book for themselves. And by God's leave, God will provide them the correct understanding. That by having that level of sincerity to say that they want to understand God's words in the Quran, that is the step that's necessary for God to open up their hearts, to give them the guidance, to show that they're making the initiative to understand God's religion. Someone who merely wants to just do what they're told and is not going to reflect upon these verses, is not going to take these verses as a reminder, is falling into the devil's trap. And this is something we should all try our utmost to avoid. God gives us a lesson from the children of Israel. In Surah 62 verse 5, it says, the example of those who were given the Torah, then failed to uphold it, is like the donkey carrying great works of literature. Miserable indeed is the example of people who rejected God's revelations. God does not guide the wicked people. Individuals who memorize the Quran without any understanding is no different than the children of Israel who had the Torah and failed to uphold it. God equates such people as that of donkeys carrying great works of literature. Now consider how blessed we are in this generation. Not only do we have the pristine Quran itself, we have so many resources for us to be able to use, to be able to understand the Quran irrespective of what language we speak. And in addition, we have communities of people that you can engage with to consult on matters, to get perspective, to be able to understand this book of God so we can apply these principles. But if despite that, we still stick with following our parents' religion blindly, we still stick with memorizing the Quran without putting any emphasis on the understanding of what it is we're reciting, then we're going to fall into the same trap as the previous generations. Again, I'm going to finish by reading Surah 23 verse 68. It says, why do they not reflect upon this scripture? Do they not realize that they have received something never attained by their ancestors? God willing, let's be appreciative. Let's not make the same mistakes as the individuals of the past. And let's do our utmost to try to understand God's words in this scripture so God willing, we can apply these principles to our own lives and benefit both in this world and in the hereafter. God willing, we're going to end there. If you guys got comments or questions, please hit us up at qurantalk@gmail.com. If you guys want to follow along the verses of the Quran and see a word-by-word breakdown of the Arabic, along with a awesome translation, please download the Quran Study app on the iOS App Store or go to QuranStudyApp.com. And if you like the podcast, please leave us a review and share it with others. And until next time, peace and God bless.